Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's Monday, November 19th. I took a couple good days off over the weekend, but now I'm here back at it discussing with you the most important things that I saw over the weekend. So we're going to discuss a couple things regarding Q, a failed debunking piece, and a couple of neat QProofs. I'm also going to talk sealed indictments, Julian Assange, the Pentagon Audit, and then a few other things. So we're going to begin here with that failed Q debunking piece by Salon.com. This article originally appeared in Alternet, and the headline says here, QAnon's true believers are devastated as the conspiracy theory goes down in flames. They're claiming that the Republican midterm loss and the firing of Jeff Sessions blew up the narrative of the QAnon conspiracy theory. I call BS. First of all, I don't know how the midterms necessarily lost anything. In fact, it was a win because of the Senate, right? And then Jeff Sessions firing. This is triggering a lot of people. I don't necessarily know why. They think the plan just goes up in flames because Jeff Sessions got fired, but in fact, the plan is shifting. It's malleable, you know? This is a war that's going on, and just because Sessions got fired, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. What if that was in the plan? Who's in the Attorney General spot now? Whitaker? What damage might he do? You see? So this article here just sucks, goes on trying to debunk a whole lot of different, very important topics, Seth Rich, all sorts of other things. And then they bring in, this is my favorite part, a supposed conspiracy theory debunker in Mike Rothschild. This guy has written a few articles for the news outlet Daily Dot, trying to debunk Q and the secret space program and a few other things. He even uses my name in here. In this tweet, he says, how were the most prominent QAnon acolytes taking the blows, whatever that means, of Q's fizzled, I don't know what fizzled, 11/11 prediction and the midterms. And he says that I was just yammering about UFOs and misusing its. It's the best he's got, I guess. Just try to talk about my grammar and the fact that I discuss UFOs. Whatever. Pathetic. Let's move on. So let's talk about that Q proof. Another one here, this one in regards to the final Senate count. So over the weekend, Donald Trump tweeted the final count for the U.S. Senate being 53 to 47, 53 Republicans, 47 Democrats. Now, what's interesting here is that Q has posted these exact numbers before, twice before, and in fact, weeks ago, many weeks ago. The last one Q posted was on the 13th of November, saying 53 to 47, and this was before we knew the final Senate result. And then that's not the first one. The first time Q posted this was on October 2nd, almost a month and a half ago, 53 to 47. So there we go, yet another Q proof. Q not only having foreknowledge, but having what looks to be a direct hand behind the scenes in the outcome of many different events, and then Donald Trump just confirming Q as being legit to all of us. So let's discuss another Q proof here, this one in regards to the Q clock. Now, the Q clock is a pretty complicated idea. I'm still even trying to wrap my head around it, and I'll probably do a video in the future just discussing this, trying to give you guys my idea of it. But the Q clock is basically the epitome of future proves past. So in many of the Q drops, the Q posts that we've gotten in the past, what happens is that they line up with future events that occur on specific days that line up on this Q clock. Now, I know that sounds like a lot. Don't worry, I'm going to explain this in the future. But you can see here, there's a lot of dates on this clock that line up when you make a line through these specific days. And this is what I mean by the future proves past. So Q has posted in the past, fight, 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 on multiple days that all line up. Those being the 19th of January this year, the 21st of December last year, and the 17th of September this year. Now all these dates line up, fight, fight, fight. And then on a date that lines up, just over the weekend, this was on November 16th, Donald Trump tweeted, fought and fought and fought. This was in regards to the election of governor in Florida. That's not really important. What's important here is the fact that he just posted on that day that lines up, fought, 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 with fight, fight, fight of the other Q posts. So again, confirmation, foreknowledge, future proofs past. I don't know how many you need until it's mathematically just impossible and everybody gets it, but I'm going to keep reporting on these Q confirmations until everybody gets it. Yes, not a psyop, high-level connections. Q is legit. Now let's discuss those sealed indictments. So very interesting article put out by ABC News over the weekend. This says there are dozens of sealed criminal indictments on the DC docket. They're questioning, are they from Mueller? But we're going to answer that in a sec here. I find it highly intriguing that they're admitting right here to sealed criminal indictments being legitimate. More than 36 sealed indictments have been added to the federal court docket just in Washington, D.C. this year. So that they're admitting to it. They're admitting that this year there are sealed indictments being filed just in D.C. Of course, they don't mention across the country. They're focusing on D.C. here, but boom! Added this year, sealed indictments right there, admitted. They explain a little bit what a sealed criminal court file is. That's good to understand. But what ABC News tries to spin here in their own little spin zone is asking if any of these sealed criminal indictments are from Mueller. I would say hardly any of them, if any. What I would say is, in fact, that they are from John Huber. Remember Huber, U.S. prosecutor from Utah that Jeff Sessions appointed to do a whole load of investigating of the FBI and the Clinton Foundation and the DOJ, just all sorts of corrupt elements, all sorts of places. So there you go, of course. ABC News spin zone with a little bit of that truth. Oh, sealed indictments, but maybe they're against Trump, not actually being created by an alliance that Trump is working with against the deep state. So it's very important to unspin the spin zone when you're looking at this mainstream media stuff. And then speaking of indictments, a court filing was accidentally revealed in regards to Julian Assange, accidentally revealing charges against him. This was admitted, this was written about over the weekend in the mainstream media, and it says, in a turn of events that reads like a plot from a movie, information has surfaced revealing that prosecutors have charged embattled WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. And it's saying here, all of these different mainstream media articles on this are claiming that it was an accident. The 3-page filing itself dates back to August, originating from the Court of Eastern District of Virginia. It was unsealed the following month in September, but hadn't received much attention until now, when a George Washington University faculty member stumbled upon an odd passage in the filing and basically accidentally found this because of a search he was doing. He basically typed in the wrong keyword and found this indictment, so it accidentally made it public. But I just don't feel like this is an accident at all. Very odd timing. And even in regards to Julian Assange being indicted, coming back to America and having to deal with any sort of court case here, I mean, what we're dealing with now in regards to our court system is much different than 2, 4, 6 years ago. You know, the FBI and the DOJ, they're getting cleansed. If Julian Assange came here for a court case, I would figure that, heck, what's he going to testify about? I would imagine that, shoot, some guys within the government, within the military, good guys, white hats, probably want him to testify. They probably want to get a court case against Julian Assange because, man, what would he bring to the table in that? You see? So it's a different ball game now when we talk about things like the Department of Justice or the military in this country than, again, 2, 4, 6, 8 years ago, you know? So think of these things. I want Julian Assange to testify. I think everybody out there should as well. And now a quick word from our sponsor in Noble Gold Investment. These guys are awesome in helping you invest your money in precious metals like gold and silver. They can even help invest your IRAs in precious metals, and they're a great family-run company out of Texas. So look into Noble Gold if you want to up your investments way faster than the stock market would, and in a resource that's going to have much better value, long-term value, than the fiat dollar, gold and silver, Noble Gold. All right, guys, now we're discussing the Pentagon Audit. So Pentagon fails its first ever audit, official says. So they're claiming that the Pentagon has failed its audit. And this was said by the number 2 of the DoD, the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Patrick Shanahan. He said, "We failed the audit, but we never expected to pass it." Added that the findings showed the need for greater discipline in financial matters within the Pentagon. And this was the most intriguing thing that I saw right here. In a briefing with reporters, Patrick Shanahan, that number 2 at the DoD, he did not provide a figure detailing how much money was unaccounted for. He did admit to it. So again, like I've been detailing for quite a while, we know there's a lot of money, quote, unaccounted for within the Pentagon coffers, within their books. So with Patrick Shanahan not wanting to admit a number, but admitting that the audit failed and it's going to take a long time for this to be remedied, I would say this is a win. You got to understand, it's a very slow process in disclosing heavy information like this to the public. And by heavy, I mean we're talking trillions of dollars, trillions and trillions of dollars that have been swiped away from the Pentagon into corporate / military faction. You know, it's like factions within factions, basically black projects, black programs that are owned and operated by quasi-corporate military groups. That's hard. That's a lot of money. And there's some pretty amazing, crazy technologies within them. So these are big, big time truths that we can't just, boom, open up to the public willy-nilly. You know, it has to go according to a specific plan. So I found it interesting they didn't want to admit the number, but Patrick Shanahan saying they failed the audit, but they never expected to pass it, just doing the optics for the public, that sort of damage control. But again, I would actually imagine that they know very well how much money was detailed in this audit. They, of course, again, just are easing this out to the public and didn't want to admit that number. And speaking of finances in regards to the government, Senator Chuck Grassley opts for Senate Finance Committee chairman, setting up Senator Lindsey Graham to basically take his spot over to lead the Judiciary Committee within the Senate. So like we've been saying in regards to the midterms, and like I and others have been mentioning, it was actually a win because pro-MAGA people, pro-alliance, pro-white hat guys are in control of that Senate. Senate has much more power than the House does. So with Chuck Grassley opting for the Finance Committee chairman, that says a lot to me because I'm seeing how the dots connect here. Remember, we were talking finances in regards to the government, and we were just talking about Pentagon waste. Back in the 80s, it was Chuck Grassley who was the man who helped to publicize the fact that there is money wasted, quote, unaccounted for, not really wasted or unaccounted for, but money basically missing from the Pentagon. Chuck Grassley really helped to publicize and out that decades ago. So it's no coincidence now that he's about to head the Finance Committee chairman. I see that as a way that this Q team, this alliance, these white hats are really going to force the missing Pentagon money out into the public with the help of Chuck Grassley. And then Lindsey Graham taking the head of the Judiciary Committee. Lindsey Graham really being unleashed since McCain's removal. So Lindsey Graham, maybe he had some puppet strings on him and those strings were cut, which is why Lindsey Graham has really been saying a lot different of things lately than he used to in the past. And I think he's going along with the plan now. So this is all good news in regards to the Senate. I really want to see what Grassley does in regards to that Pentagon audit. And Lindsey Graham just doing his work that he's been doing. Now let's touch on that House for a minute. So pro-MAGA people gain control of the Senate but are losing the House. That's not bad, although the GOP in the House is trying to do one last move before they lose power. GOP is preparing to subpoena Comey and Lynch, former FBI Director James Comey and former Attorney General Loretta Lynch. They're going to be testifying. Comey, both closed door. Comey on November 29th, Lynch on December 5th. Interesting. I'm sure we'll all be watching for that in a few short weeks here. Next story, let's talk about that Khashoggi killing, if I'm getting his name right here, Khashoggi. He was that journalist that was killed in Saudi Arabia recently. And we get a report over the weekend from the CIA. So the CIA here concluded that it was Saudi Crown Prince bin Salman that ordered the journalist's death. Sources say But let's take a look at these mainstream media outlets that are claiming this. Washington Post, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, oh, New York Times. Wow. When I look for truth, those are a bunch of shit rags that I definitely don't go for. And the fact that they're all referencing the CIA. It was a CIA report that said this. Again, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it because just over a year ago, it was the Saudi Crown Prince bin Salman that seemed to be pushing for reform, that seemed to be making pacts, making an alliance with the white hats in the Western world, the good guys, Q Group, again, whatever you want to call them. And this Khashoggi killing looks to be ordered by the deep state to really put pressure on Trump, put pressure on Saudi Crown Prince bin Salman and that newly formed alliance. That's what I'm feeling. That's what it looks like. I'm not trusting automatically any sort of CIA report, especially reported by places like the Washington Post, CNN, New York Times. My deduction there. And now let's talk about the Arecibo message. So this is neat, seeing this on November 15th, 4 days ago, on Google's homepage. They had a piece of artwork. You know, they dedicate their homepage to whatever the important day is now and again. And Google dedicated their homepage artwork to the Arecibo message because it was the anniversary of it. On November 15th in 1974, the most powerful broadcast ever deliberately beamed into space was made from Puerto Rico. That's what they're calling the Arecibo message. And Google commemorated it with a doodle. What is the Arecibo message? Let's go through this article a little bit. The message is a 3-minute transmission of exactly 1,679 binary digits, carrying basic information about humanity in hopes that it might reach some extraterrestrial beings. And they basically shot this radio message into space. Who created it? Dr. Frank Drake, Carl Sagan, and a few other more, mainstream scientists. Not really hard-hitting scientists, but the mainstream ones. And the message said a bunch of stuff in regards to humanity, our place in our solar system, our DNA, a stick figure of what humanity looks like, and some biochemical readings. And then according to the SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute, again, the smokescreen, the mainstream scientists, those who don't really speak too much truth, they said that it's unlikely we'll ever get a reply. So let's answer that. Is any of that true? No, we actually did get a reply, funny enough, and this reply came in the form of a crop circle. Crop circles. Fascinating things. Really look into them. There's a lot of truths on multiple levels in regards to crop circles that you'll find. You can find spiritual and even scientific, physical information, knowledge, truths in regards to crop circles. They're fascinating, fascinating things. And this crop circle was found 27 years later in a field in Britain. Funny enough, this response to the Arecibo message was made in a field that was right next to Britain's largest telescope. So those extraterrestrials, cheeky as heck. But this response to the Arecibo message, you can see right here, it's the same sort of message, the same sort of binary message, just with readings basically of what look like a different species, not human species. So it's the same thing, just as if it was sent from a different species. So you see here a different DNA reading. It looks like they have more strands in their DNA that they're trying to tell us through this crop circle. They have a little bit larger of a head. That looks like a depiction of their body structure. So they could be a little smaller. Looks like it could be a gray or just a smaller being with a little bit bigger of a head. Looks to be this is their solar system. So they have planetary celestial bodies in their solar system like we do. And then this here is the radio telescope that the humans used, a picture of it. And this looks to be like a fractal transmission, a fractal communication or quantum communication system, if you want to call it that, that this particular species used or uses for their communications. So a little bit more advanced than our radio telescopes, the quantum communication systems. This stuff has already been built in human black projects. It just hasn't been brought out to the public yet in full. But of course, a non-terrestrial species, an extraterrestrial species, will be using these sorts of advanced sciences. Many of the black project sciences got this from extraterrestrials. It's just not in the public yet, unfortunately. Will be soon. But there you go. You got a response to that Arecibo message. They're trying to claim there wasn't one. There is. That Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute is just a smokescreen, much like NASA, much like many other organizations. They're all smokescreens meant to muddy the waters, misinform us, take us away from the truth, from knowing ourselves. And Google, funny enough, giving an homage to that Arecibo message. But it was very important to really know the fact that we did get a response, and crop circles, just amazingly fascinating things. So there you go, guys. You get some Q details there. We talked sealed indictments, Julian Assange, Pentagon Audit, and that Arecibo message. Thanks for watching. Thanks for your support. I'll be seeing you guys very soon. Take care.